we take you inside the battle against a deadly narcotic, a synthetic painkiller 100 times more powerful than morphine. As a street drug, it's far more potent than even the purest forms of heroin. Fentanyl is taking the opioid epidemic to a new level of urgency, especially in New Hampshire, where the monster drug kills far more people than gun violence. So what's the DEA doing to stop it from spreading? ABC senior justice correspondent Pierre Thomas reports from the front lines.
Lubbock, Texas. Covered head to toe using oxygen tanks to breathe, you would think these officers are about to come in contact with a deadly disease. But this is an alleged illegal drug lab.
Us just being here next door and just regular stuff like that, and we could have been exposed.
Inside, officers are searching for something so lethal and toxic that law enforcement can't afford to take any chances. All of this because they're about to come in contact with fentanyl, a synthetic opioid often mixed with heroin, but up to 40 times more powerful, and leaving a deadly trail across the country.
This heroin overdose is one of more than 80 in just 3 days around the tri-state.
As heroin sweeps across the nation, fentanyl is making it even more dangerous. And now users are taking it in bootleg pill form, mixed with God knows what. In 2015, the number of opioid deaths surpassed 30,000, fueled in part by the surge in fentanyl overdoses, far outpacing deaths by gun-related homicides. So toxic that the DEA recently sent out a warning to police around the country with this chilling story.
Grabbed the bag and I closed it up, forcing the air out of it so I get a good seal. And when I did that, a bunch of it poofed up into the air, right into our face, and we ended up inhaling it.
I felt like my body was shutting down.
You actually felt like you were dying.
And you have to be that careful every day.
Yes.
I went to a law enforcement laboratory in New Hampshire to see how they're battling the deadly drug.
This would be an example of heroin, a lethal dose of a typical batch of heroin. And then this vial would be the typical dose of fentanyl. What would be considered.
You can
Correct.
barely see it.
The air quality is not it's not a level that you can breathe inside these fentanyl mills. We're forced to wear air packs and masks to breathe fresh air while we're in these mills, these fentanyl mills.
Tanks.
Yes, oxygen tanks.
We suit up to get a sense of what the agents are going through.
So you're gonna step into it, take a pair of pants.
Got it. Okay, so put this on that thing.
Deep breath.
This is not that fun, I can tell you. It's very cumbersome, labor-intensive to put on one of these suits and to try to take a dangerous material out of the crime scene.
Suits are so difficult and exhausting to maneuver in, agents can only wear them for 15 minutes at a time. Fentanyl nearly killed 21-year-old Morgan Gilman, who said she was looking for a stronger high after more than a year on heroin.
I picked up a large amount of fentanyl and then did what I would normally do. And then on my drive home, I was doing about 80 on the highway when I OD'd at the wheel.
She crashed, waking up handcuffed to a hospital bed.
Did that make you want to get off the drug, or did you still have a desire for it?
I was so afraid of detoxing.
Morgan lives at ground zero for the fentanyl epidemic in the tiny state of New Hampshire. It's a safe state. There are typically fewer than 20 homicides a year, but there were more than 400 overdose deaths in 2015. Around 70% of those were fentanyl related. State officials say they expect overdose deaths in 2016 to come close to 500 once all the data is in. Again, overwhelmingly fentanyl related.
I've been involved in the forensic field here in New Hampshire for 27 years, and I lived through the crack epidemics and the methamphetamine. We never had deaths associated with it like we do now.
The #2 ranking official at the DEA says he's never seen anything like it.
If anything can be likened to a weapon of mass destruction and what it does to a community, it's fentanyl.
The synthetic opioid is cheaper and easier to produce than heroin, a gold mine for the cartels.
What you're seeing is some very sophisticated criminal organizations. They understand the addiction issue is present here, and they're doing everything they can to control the market.
Yet another case of Mexican cartels influencing what's happening here in the stateside?
Absolutely. I mean, I think people on the West Coast and Silicon Valley are working on the new iPhone. I think the Sinaloa cartel is working on the next product they're going to market to the addiction base in the United States. And I got to tell you, across the country, they don't care who dies.
It's now being distributed throughout the country, coming not just from Mexico, but also China, spread to secret locations, warehouses, apartment complexes, and homes. Drug dealers sometimes using something as simple as a blender to mix it. It's like Russian roulette when it hits the streets. If too much fentanyl gets mixed in, people die. Authorities are now trying to target the sellers, believed to be the merchants of death.
So we're gonna breach at the same time. Whoever sees them first, just be cognizant.
5 a.m. and the DEA has teamed up with local police to take down a suspected dealer.
That's the dealer with his hands up.
The suspect is apprehended. Next, agents search his house.
So the search is still underway, but they've already found what they believe is some product?
It is. So this is what was located inside of the residence. What we have here is just a finger of a suspected fentanyl with maybe some heroin, but definitely fentanyl with some cut. And this is some broken up finger, you can tell.
Yeah.
Later that day, 2 more arrests.
Is that the guy? Yeah.
Both accused of selling a heroin-fentanyl combo that killed its users.
So there's 2 people in the span of an hour, less than a couple miles apart.
Across the country, the arrests are just one weapon in the war on drugs.
How much heroin did you use?
Some police have started releasing photos of addicted parents passing out in their cars, their toddlers strapped in their car seats, hoping to shame them.
The women unable to move or speak in an apparent heroin overdose.
But in Manchester, some measures also include compassionate, non-punitive approaches. There, firehouses have become places of refuge for users coming in off the streets.
We have a guy walking over right now. Hey, how you doing? You made it through the night.
Every day, a steady stream of people who've often used fentanyl and heroin come here looking for an emergency lifeline.
What are we doing?
Help going to Serenity Place.
Serenity Place for what exactly?
Drug abuse.
Which drug?
Spice, heroin, and crack, and marijuana.
This man gets his vitals checked and then is evaluated for a recovery program he hopes will break his pattern of drug abuse.
We have a second one walked in, so.
It's a so-called safe station where there's no risk of arrest.
Police are working extremely hard to, take the drugs off the streets, and they're hitting it hard this way. We're trying to get people in recovery. We're hitting it hard this way. You got to hit this problem from so many different angles.
All hands on deck for a state under siege. Its victims many.
You can't say no, even though you know it can kill you, and it has nearly killed you. I mean, you can't stop.
Natasha Simmons had used heroin for years, but had never even heard of fentanyl until she ended up in the hospital, the first of 3 overdoses.
I feel like I'm finally ready now. I don't know why it took so long, and it hurts, and it hurt a lot of people around me.
It cost you a lot.
It did. It's taken almost everything from me. I've lost everything in my life besides my life at this point, and I don't want anybody else or anybody else's family, for that matter, to go through that.
When did you last OD? How long ago was that?
6 days ago.
6 days ago. Wow.
I've been clean for 6 days.
So you're fresh to this process.
Yep. Scary.
What brought you to this point? Heroin addiction.
It's a struggle Natasha hopes to overcome. Now 90 days clean thanks to the help of others like Morgan, who's been sober for 7 months.
How do you spell your last name, Tosh?
And is working not just to save her own life, but others.
Do you feel like you have a future now?
I do. I have a job helping people who are just like me. Everybody cares about each other so much. Like, I get to sing at a recovery rally on Saturday.
You feel lucky to have survived?
Yeah. I'm grateful every single day.
Grateful to have survived and trying to keep others from choosing her painful path. For Nightline, Pierre Thomas in Manchester, New Hampshire.